Welcome to Screen Quest, a podcast where a fellowship of film lovers and armchair movie experts plays film roulette. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Waterman, joined by May Finch.
Hello.
And of course, Will Rotondi.
Hey, what's going on?
On today's episode, we are talking about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, starring Harrison Ford, Sean Connery. And I'm very, very excited to talk about that with both of you. And of course, we'll be drawing a side quest. But first, it's time to talk about what we have been watching. It's been a little while. For Halloween, there was lots and lots of scary movies. But I'm interested to hear what you guys have been watching in between or after. So, May Finch, we're going to start with you. Go for it.
All right. It's very exciting. I've been watching cartoons.
Yeah.
I have watched very little of King of the Hill, so we're working our way through that right now. And then my partner has never seen Agretsuko, which is my favorite anime about workplace and enemies and such. And so we're also working our way through that. I've seen it all already, but it's really fun to rewatch.
I have not heard of this. What is it called? One more time.
Agretsuko. It has a little red panda in it, and I actually have her on my desk because I love her so much.
Wow,
she's so
that's
cute.
Adorable. But I'll admit I'm not familiar. That's cool though.
It's on Netflix.
Lighthearted, funny-ish.
Oh, very lighthearted, very funny.
Okay.
The whole premise of the
Chaotic.
show is it's this office worker who is like very demure and docile in her daily life, and she gets shit on by her boss who's like sexist and like, you know, all the other like inner office politics that most people can relate to. But her like release is that she sings heavy metal karaoke.
Nice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't feel better after singing heavy metal karaoke, honestly?
Right?
Mhm.
That I decided that's my go-to karaoke for now because I don't have a great voice is Metallica. That's what I do. So easy. You just get a couple in there and you're fine. Like you just ham it up like Hetfield.
I want to learn how to do the scream because I feel like it would be a great release.
Yeah,
For
like
now,
a
I'll just keep screaming Mountain Goat songs, but I'll work on the heavy metal scream.
Mhm.
the scream or the growl, because like there's kind of like, you know, different like
But
when I
like
think
scream
like
talk where it's like you're saying lyrics, but it's like I can't even do it. I can't even imitate. Yeah,
Like-
yeah. Will's got it.
Yeah.
yeah, like some Slipknot for sure. Like I'm always like, I don't know how those guys do it day after day. Like when they have a tour and it's just like 5-6 days in a row of that. It's like, how do you not blow out your vocal cords? Like, that's very
Maybe that's
impressive.
just how they talk all the time.
I feel bad for anyone who like serves them at a drive-through somewhere.
Yeah, for real.
Can you imagine?
Hear that coming through the speaker? Nope.
Can I take your order?
please?
Oh, no, it's far. Like, oh my god.
Can I have a name for that? Yeah.
Wow. Well,
man.
Will Rotondi, what have you been up to? What have you been watching, man?
Man, it is. Oh, geez. I feel like I should have better answers to this. It's not to say that what I've watched hasn't been fun. I just haven't watched a lot of stuff. It's mostly been TV. I've been trying to keep up with Loki on Disney Plus. I've been trying to keep up with Lower Decks for my Star Trek fix on Paramount. But like movie wise, I'm trying to think about the last thing that I watched. I'm sure there's something there. My wife's been watching Bodies on Netflix, so I kind of caught like bits and pieces of that because I love trippy time travel stuff, and so I was like adjacent to some of that storyline and intrigued by it. But yeah, it's probably Star Trek and Star Trek and Marvel, one of which you guys like, the other which you guys probably would not like. But yeah. Although I have to say, Loki feels like the Doctor Who of Marvel enough that if you like Doctor Who, then you can get into that. So maybe he's like off the list of hate.
Are you
It's the
saying
first time-
Loki is low-key good?
He is low-key good. He is low-key good.
He's low-key anti-hero. Let's not kid ourselves. Now, kidding.
Yeah. Yep.
So I watched the first season of that, and this is the first time I've been tempted to watch a Marvel TV show in a while because I really did like the wibbly wobbly timey wimey to if we're gonna go the Doctor Who route, but I still can't be bothered. I feel like for the most part, like I'm so like annoyed with like the MCU, like even like watching of the discourse, it seems like people are exhausted more than anything. Like I don't even see like the whiny fanboy stuff anymore. Just people are either like exasperated or like when something is good, like that I get the impression like sort of the subtext is like they're surprised that it's good, and I'm like, that's not a good place to be, is it? Like, like coming off of a 10-year run of like success for the most part, but I'm sure they'll sort it out. Star Wars is still pretty decent for the most part. Like I feel like they've more or less managed to have more hits than misses, right?
That's true. Generally speaking, yeah. I think Loki is so I liked season 1. Season 2, I don't know if it's the pacing or if I just forgot how slow the pacing was from season 1, but the pacing is not the quickest. But I think the goofiness and the humor are enough that I stick around for it, that I kind of want to see where it goes. So it's like the quirky characters and the weird aesthetic. Like when you watch it, you're like, this feels like it's its own. It's kind of like watching Wes Anderson. You're like, you see his film and you're like, sometimes you sort of just go along for the ride because you like being in that world and looking at all the colors. Even if you don't necessarily want to stick with the story as much, you're like, you know what, I'll see it through to the end. Not always the case, as we have talked about with Asteroid City. I think with May like being like, nah, I can't do that. So it's it's hit or miss. I'm not everybody's, there's always an exception. But I think overall, I think generally speaking, that's sort of how I look at Loki.
Yeah, I might be something I watch like during my holiday break or not. I don't know. Like
or not,
oh no. We'll see.
Hard pass.
In case it's not been said before, I want Marvel to be successful. I want them to like go back to like this simpler, like more focused times,
Yeah.
Just think the scope got away from them a little bit.
Okay.
Well, we have been watching we like going back through the league because we play fantasy football and it felt like an appropriate thing to watch this time of year for our stupid show. Some of it's not dated the best. Most of it's okay though, and it's very funny. I think it was creep kind of like seeing Mark Duplass. I was like, that guy's funny. Let's check out the league.
Hey.
And it's got Nick Kroll and a bunch of funny people in it, so it's fine. We started Welcome to Wrexham last night, which I mean, for the first episode anyway, it was excellent, and I've heard really good things. That is about the journey of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney buying the Wrexham football club in Wales, and like with the dreams of helping them advance up, through the there's like several tiers of professional football and English football, and they're at the bottom, like where the show starts. And like their players make about $40,000 a year, like as professional athletes. So I'm very curious to see where it goes. On the plane, I watched a bunch of animated films like Super Mario Brothers movie and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. That was cute and amazing. The one that was really, really great was Triangle of Sadness. Like I did not know a thing about that film, and I just put it on. I was like, I know people like this, and I'm glad that I experienced it that way because it went places that I was not expecting, and I really enjoyed it. It made a big impression. I know some people didn't vibe with it, but I see May kind of smiling and nodding. Did you see it?
No, but anyone I've heard to talk about it in real life has said exactly what you said, and I think that's funny. It's like, yeah, I had no idea what this was or how to feel about it, but it was very good.
Yeah. I mean, I think approach it as blind as possible and just kind of sit down and enjoy the ride. I had like similar feelings. Well, I think even if I compare it to something else, like it might like prime you. So I don't want to do that, but we can talk like once you've seen it. The big thing I've been watching is so far 6 out of 33 Toho Godzilla films. In anticipation of Godzilla -1, I am watching the Japanese subtitled versions that are part of the Criterion Collection currently. But that ends, I think, after 15 or 16 films. And then I've got to probably resort to some less conventional means to find some of them because
Mhm.
various films are like out of print or hard to find in America. But my goal is to watch all 33 before Godzilla -1 comes out, many which I've not seen before. So
Feel
that has
welcome to cut this out because it's Jack specific. But is there like a good VHS store around here?
um Aaron Bobby would know because he collects
Yeah.
like VHS. There's like pop-up markets and stuff, but yeah, I don't know like what I do specifically know one of them, which is the Return of Godzilla from 84, which was called Godzilla 1985 in America. Um like it's hard to find that. Like it's like one of the rarest like VHS specifically like for like I don't even know if there's a Japanese like version with subtitles of the VHS, but it's a rights issue thing. But yeah, so like weirdly enough, like in America, the original Godzilla film and that one, they like changed the story and intercut Raymond Burr, an American actor, into the films because they felt like for the first one, people wouldn't like sit through a subtitled movie. So they're like, oh, we'll have an American hero. It'll be dubbed with English and like it's going to be this whole so it's a completely different film. And then when like the Return of Godzilla came out, they're like, hey, Raymond Burr, you want to come back and do the same thing again? And so I think you could find Godzilla 1985, which is the American version, maybe a little easier. But I'm not interested in that. I kind of like it's been. I was telling like Will off or before we started, it's been a really interesting exercise because so many of these films are very different than the versions I saw like on the Sci-Fi Channel that were dubbed. Like significantly longer in some cases. Like there's like plot lines and things that like just were excised out of the American versions because pacing or whatever. So I do find a lot of the additional content to be interesting, and it's always nice to hear a film for me like in the native language, even if I'm reading subtitles. But yeah, we'll see. Hopefully I can make it. It's a tall order. I realize I'm like, why did I do this to myself? 33 films is a lot to watch, like on top of like
Do
all the other
it.
stuff I gotta do.
You're
But
18% through. Keep going.
I mean like to be fair, it's not like it's the most like intense films to watch. Like they're not exhausting by any means, and they tend to be on the shorter side. They're tight 90s as we like on the podcast for the most part. So like and they're very goofy in many cases. I'm getting into the goofy area or era of them, so I'm feeling like some momentum building because I'm like, oh, this is piece of cake. Like I'm just watching like once they give Godzilla like the softer eyes and he starts dancing and
Aw.
doing drop kicks and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
that's where the good stuff is, like in my opinion.
The kawaii Godzilla.
Yeah.
Aw. There's
So
a
yeah.
video somewhere. If I could find it to you, or find it, I'll send it to you, Chris, where it's like a documentary about they were filming some of this, like the practical effects that they did for one of the Godzilla movies. And I don't remember the actress's name that did it, but they did an interview with her. And they had footage of when she would play one of the creatures when she was in the suit and how tiny she
Okay.
was to fit into it. And then she would like drop down on all fours. And when she would do the creature, she would make her own sound effects to make it roar before they like dubbed over it with special effects. So, you'd see her like crawl across this little like, fake city. And then she would go like, rah, or rah, and it was just really cute. So if I could find it, I'll share it with you. I think it would be fun. So, yeah.
That's great. I do remember like when the American like Matthew Broderick like piece of shit came out. They and I some people love it. I'm sorry if you do love it, like enjoy, like it's fine. But they had like a little like mockumentary thing that they did on HBO or something where they went to the original Toho studios and they like did a joke about how the roar came about, which is like they opened a hinge like a rusty gate, and that's not at all like where it came from. It was like really tongue-in-cheek. They talked to the original guy in the Godzilla suit, and it was great because he's like this old man and he's like so small and frail, and they're like, do you still have any of those old like moves? And like he like does like like no suit or anything, he just kind of like shows like how like he would move and some of the characterization that he gave Godzilla. It was the same guy for a long time. Like it was a big deal when he retired, I guess, like in the 70s. But
Wow.
I can't imagine that's comfortable, getting into
Yeah.
any of those suits. You probably feel like such a buffoon. Like you're
Oh,
stomping around these little cities with cardboard and stuff. But anyway,
you must embody the character of Godzilla, Chris. You must become the monster.
yeah, I've just always loved Godzilla. Like I grew up as a kid, like watching them, like on like I said, sci-fi and VHS, and something about that like monster has always spoken to me. And like to this day, I love giant monster movies. So like when Cloverfield came out,
Oh yeah,
loved it.
yeah,
Good stuff.
yeah. Unapologetically, I'll say I loved it. Yeah, I know people rag on that film and also just in general with stuff J.J. Abrams does, but I really liked Cloverfield.
I thought Cloverfield was every like what more could you want from that? Like, I know like people don't like when they don't solve like the mystery fully, but um like to me, like I remember the first time I saw that, like that's one of those movies where like I was hyper aware of like my pulse, like just how like revved up I was, like, and I think it's because I was in a big, seeing it on a big screen, and it
Yeah,
felt very authentic to me of like, oh, this is what it would be like to try to like get out of a big city when there's like something like this, like stomping around. So yeah, I liked it. It's
for
not a
sure.
perfect movie, but I think for like what it is, like it does a really good job. All right, well, hey, with that, let's draw us a side quest, and then we'll talk about Indiana Jones Junior
Bum,
and
ba-dum,
Senior.
bum. Bum, ba-dum.
All right, this is gonna be agree to disagree. What do
Basically, your film hot take.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, but
So agree to disagree is where choose a film where you and the critics or general audience had differing tastes.
So this may have been just because I was like 17, 18 and like really into Cavill from like have like the new Superman movie and stuff like that. But
yeah.
I loved The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Like I
Oh,
thought it was the
yeah.
perfect cheesy spy movie. I think it also has Gal Gadot in it, maybe. It's like the leading woman. Now I want to actually look up the cast.
I think it's
No,
Alicia
it's
Vikander.
Alicia Vikander, which she kind of
Yeah.
looks like Gal Gadot. Anyway, and Army Hammer,
Yep.
who is hated for good reasons now, but at the time, I did not know, and I was
Yeah.
just like, "Hey, these are two good-looking guys doing spy stuff, being very bad and silly about it. This is amusing to me." And I loved it. I was like, this is the new Princess Bride. Everyone's going to like this. And then I think a lot of people just didn't see it. And then it also has very mid reviews everywhere. People are just like, it's fine. But I don't
I'm
know. I
people.
thought it was
I
a
did
good
not see it.
combination of action and humor. And like, I thought it was fun. I didn't think it took itself too seriously.
It's like a remake or retelling, right, of a
Mm-hmm.
TV show or another film or something, right?
It's
Which is
the
it? Do you know?
2015 movie I'm talking about, to be clear.
No,
Yeah.
I know that, but like, what the source material is a TV show or a film? Like, what is The Man from U.N.C.L.E? Do
I
It's a
think it's a
anybody?
TV
TV
show.
show, and
Okay,
maybe I liked it because I hadn't seen any of the stuff that came before it. So maybe it just was like very rude and dishonorable towards the source material. Who knows?
I think that's okay though. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
as we talked about with Mission Impossible, like that first film kind of tries to like do the same thing, and some aspects work, I guess, okay, but it gets way better when they abandon that. But yeah, I have not seen it, so I cannot support or refute your opinion. So
It's basically two dueling spies that are like the best, but also very clumsy. So it's kind of just like two spies that are constantly like rolling the best on luck rolls. And
okay,
Yeah, they get like their
like
car stuck like in between like a building, right? There's
yeah,
like,
they're not the
yeah.
best at what they do. They're very awkward and dorky, but they are the best. And they get paired up together for this like kind of like end of the world stakes mission. And of course, there's like a leading lady that they're competing over. And like, sure, that was like kind of cliche, but she's funny and she holds her own. So I was okay with it there.
okay, fair enough. So it's kind of like Spy versus Spy, like from
Yeah.
like Mad Comics, or like Mr. Magoo versus Mr. Magoo, I guess, from the sound of it a little bit. Like,
Yeah, it's a spy bromance.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Well, fair enough. I might have to check that out. That sounds like not as bad as I was envisioning it, like based on what little I saw about it. So,
Oh.
There's a particular scene involving like a lake or a reservoir that I'll send you guys after this because it's the best. If you only watch that scene, I'll be happy.
hey, fair enough. Um, it sounds very similar to how my wife feels about The Mexican, which is a film that I tried to
Aw,
watch one time, and I was like, anyway.
nice.
Have you seen Man from Uncle, Will?
I have, and I would agree 100% with everything May has said. The movie is awesome, and it is easy on the eyes too. I don't care what you're looking for, it's got it. So, but yeah, it's just fun. It's like Guy Ritchie directed it. It's
Oh,
got a lot
okay.
of that, that humor. It's it's not too dark, but it like May said, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's just a lot of fun. So I would recommend it. Now, granted, I haven't seen the source material, and again, I know that can be polarizing. I feel like maybe this may or may not be a good comparison, but like the Avengers movie that had Ray Fiennes and Uma Thurman and Sean Connery back in like the 90s is probably on par with like the people that either liked or didn't like that movie based on the TV show they grew up with. So but yeah, no, it's great. I think I would definitely recommend that film for anybody to check out.
I'm so
All
glad you're
right.
with me, Will.
Hey, I was
I
trying
got your
I was
back,
trying to
man.
find validation from somebody, so I'm glad Bill could tell you that your opinion is shared at least by one other person on the planet.
Wholeheartedly.
That's against the world, Will. That's against
Yep,
Rotten Tomatoes.
that's right. Rotten Tomatoes could suck it. They don't know what they're talking about.
And with that,
And now
well,
for our main feature.
Someone's
Yeah.
going to clip that and send it to Rotten Tomatoes. So
Rotten Tomatoes is gonna be like, you realize we're an aggregate, right?
Yeah.
Like
It
absolutely,
doesn't
like
matter
not.
what you think, Will. Yep.
Well, here we are with our main topic today, which is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the third in the Indiana Jones like franchise. This is your pick, Will. So you get to do the honors of guiding us through the discussion.
I will try my best to get us through this. I guess as always, I should probably recap the story for Indiana Jones because I'm 37, but I realize not everybody's watched this movie before. So with that in mind, um, like Chris was saying, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is the third of the original trilogy for Indiana before they tried to revamp it later with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny. It mirrors a lot of the previous indie films in that it starts out with sort of like a side quest that Indiana Jones goes on. In this case, we get to see him when he's younger, and get an indirect introduction to his father, who's Henry Jones Sr., played by Sean Connery. We then flash forward to 1938, where we learn that, or rather, where Indiana learns that his father's gone missing because he's on this search for the Holy Grail, which has been like this quest of his that he has had his obsession, I guess, with learning about where this elusive Grail may be, and seems to have finally come close to finding it. And so he goes on this quest with his co-worker Marcus Brody, and partners up with a lady named Elsa, who was supposedly the last person who was working with Henry Jones Sr. They meet up in Venice, and then later through some adventures, end up at this castle that's on the Austrian-German border, which is where Indy's father's being held captive. Indy helps get him out, and then through like a series of both exciting and slightly humorous action sequences, deals with motorcycle chases, deals with airplanes, deals with a tank out in the middle of the desert, all before finally arriving at the Canyon of the Crescent Moon, which is supposedly where the tomb lays, where this Holy Grail is buried. And Inside the tomb, Indy and his companions confront the last remaining Nazis that are there, who are led by a wealthy industrialist named Walter Donovan. And Donovan shoots Indy's father and then forces Indy at gunpoint to enter the tomb, try to get past its defenses, and eventually find the Grail. And so Indiana Jones goes through 3 challenges, ends up finding this immortal knight from the Crusades who's just been chilling out in this cave since like the last, I don't know, 700 years. I can't remember the number he threw out, but like he's been guarding this room full of chalices and essentially tells Indy that if you want to find the cup of Christ, you have to choose the right one. The right one will give you immortality and the wrong one will kill you. At this point, Elsa, who's been buddy with Walter up until this point, sort of, well, I guess sort of on and off. You could kind of see she's conflicted and then she's kind of in stuff for herself, but she ends up tricking Donovan to choose the wrong cup. So then Donovan basically super ages, becomes a skeleton, and then just like turns to dust right in front of her. Indy chooses the right cup, which helps save his dad. Then Elsa tries to steal the cup after clearly not listening to the old man in the cave, and the whole place just implodes on itself. So then the last scene of the film that we get as our heroes ride off into the sunset on horseback is, and we've got Indy, we've got his dad, we've got Marcus, and we've got Indy's buddy from the first film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Sala, and they all make it out okay, just kind of doing their thing, riding off while we listen to the awesome soundtrack theme, Indiana or Raiders theme from the first film. And that's what I got. So hopefully that covers the main plot points. There's a ton that goes on in this movie. It's great. It's a lot of fun. May not have aged so well in certain areas, but I mean that's kind of a given for some of the, you know, the parts of this film. But
for
yeah.
sure.
With that in mind, before we jump into individual aspects about why I feel like this film is greater than the sum of its parts, as always, general impressions. I'm not going to pick on you first, Bay. I'm going to throw this over to Chris, and then and then go from there. But yeah, Chris, tell us your thoughts on Indy and the Last Crusade.
This is the first Indiana Jones film I ever saw. We had it on VHS. It was in this like weird time period where like there would be tie-in marketing for like some, I think it was Pepsi for this one, where it's like literally a guy just going to his kitchen to like get a Pepsi, and like the start of the VHS was like there's like a pit of snakes and like the floor's caving in, and I'll have to find that clip and stick it in somewhere here. But anyway, so like that's what I remember like first and foremost about this is like it's a very early, like a pretty intense movie for like a kid that's like 5 years old, 6 years old, you know, like there's a lot of adult themes. But I fell in love with the character instantly. And it's one of my favorites for that reason. I mean, I think it's up there with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Sean Connery definitely elevates it. Like, I think beyond, like the casting is such a big part of like why it works so well. Like, and the interplay between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. But I also like, I think this is a great example of Steven Spielberg doing like his father-son like obsession, which you see over and over and over and over again in his films, like really well. Like I think there's like a lot of good payoffs and some surprising emotionally like resonant moments like between Indy and his father, and kind of like the abandonment issues that he's felt like his whole life and seeking of the approval. And I think it works beautifully. I like it a lot. So many memorable action sequences, of course, and as you alluded to, great soundtrack. But I think it's just all in all, great movie.
So rewatching this was fun because the last time I watched it, I think I was like early teens or maybe a tween. I'm not sure. And I remember my main reactions when I was watching this as a kid being like, "Oh, this is so fun and adventurous," and then being mad at how Elsa is characterized, which we'll get to, but
Oh
I didn't like her character then, and I don't like her character now, slightly different reasons, but
nice.
Overall, I still thought that when it got to the action scenes, they were very fun and they were very cheeky, which I like for an action scene. They weren't just trying to show that, oh yeah, Indiana Jones is a badass. They were showing kind of like his dad's reactions to his actions, which I thought was very fun and cool to see. Especially since it's obvious that he had no idea kind of like what his son does. And you see that he's kind of impressed, but also scared at the same time. And that's beautiful. And I have to agree with Chris. I think like the strongest part of the film is just the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery in those scenes. Yeah, I thought it was good. Plot wise does not hold up at all, especially since like I don't know, it follows kid logic for like what you think a international heist and Nazi conspiracy and hunt for the Holy Grail would look like, but it does not hold up upon adult viewing, at least not for me. Especially those traps. I was kind of like, you guys really, you couldn't figure this out without Indy? Like it's not that hard. If you gave my D&D party like an hour with that, we would get it.
Nice.
We wouldn't necessarily roll well, but like we would know how to do it. Like,
yeah.
No offense, but I don't think many Nazis play D&D. It's just I'm just gonna throw that one out there.
I mean, good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. The other thing you mentioned. Like, yeah, I agree. There's some things that don't age well, but you know, it always ages well. Punching Nazis. So I'm glad that's a recurrent theme in Indiana Jones.
Shout out to the Foley artist in this film. Every time somebody gets punched in an Indiana Jones movie, it sounds exactly the same and unique, like to an Indiana Jones movie. I don't think I've ever heard anybody get punched in an action movie like they do in these.
Yeah, it is a great sound effect. For sure.
Well, I agree with both of you. I think that this is definitely something that I loved because I watched it so much as a kid. I like the fact that it is very much something that as a kid you can watch or watch as an adult and you can get something out of it. It's very much like a family film, considering there's a lot of dark aspects to it between the Nazis and, I mean, like, a dude gets run over by a tank. Like, there's definitely some stuff that happens off screen or that is, you know, an aspect of the film that, depending on how you portray it, can be very dark. And Indy toes that line between being like accessible to any sort of age group and have an adventure story without being like too gory or too profane or even too childlike, you know, conversely. Now, I will say with the plot, rewatching it, I had so much fun with my wife pointing out stuff and being like, hold up a minute. Like, you have a castle with all these Nazis in the basement, you know, but you don't have any guards outside the front door. You have this random butler who also speaks English when you answer the door. Like, I don't know. It's just like things like that where I just love picking the movie apart just because it was goofy and fun to do. But at the same time, I agree with you, man. Like, there's some stuff where I'm just like, this is definitely just like, this was meant to be fun. This was not meant to be like, you know, serious. And I think Indiana Jones for the most part has sort of been that way. I think they kind of went a little off the rails with the goofy aspect of that with Crystal Skull. That's a whole other conversation, but I think that's sort of the problem where Indiana maybe veered a little bit too out off to left field and didn't kind of hold on to what made it so charming in the first, you know, at least the first and the third. Some people may or may not agree with the second one. You know, the Temple of Doom is like regarded as the worst, although maybe after Crystal Skull, maybe not the worst, but
I don't think it's the worst. I think Crystal Skull is the worst.
Yeah, it took it. Yeah, it jumped the shark.
I rewatched Temple of Doom, and like if you approach that just knowing that it's not meant to be taken seriously at all, like that is not the worst of them.
Yeah, I actually like Temple of Doom, but I also love Short Round. So, and I know, again, things do not age well with that movie either, but still, I love that kid, man, from the Goonies. And obviously now with him finally being able to get, you know, more work at Hollywood. So, you know,
everything everywhere all at once, baby.
That's right.
Fun fact / a memory that you guys just unearthed is that I was in a baking competition as a kid where my dad and I made a Temple of Doom cake.
Oh, heck yeah.
Just like one of my favorite bonding things I ever did with my dad.
What did it look like?
Thank you, Indiana Jones, for that precious father moment. You're delivering on that front again and again.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What did it look
what
like? I
Chris
want to know
asked,
what
like what did it look like?
just
Yeah.
I'll go look
describe
for
it.
a photo because I think my mom took
there a
one of
volcano?
us like posing with it. So I'll go look for one.
Imhotep, or not Imhotep. I'm sorry. Kalima. I'm getting my see now. Imhotep. All right. So random aside, we wouldn't have the mummy if we didn't have Indiana Jones.
You're
Clearly,
very,
that's the case.
very, very right. Yes.
But that the mental connection slip of my mind for Kalima and like taking a man's heart out of his chest, like so
Understand.
that's what I'm curious about. Was it the volcano or was it the dude's heart?
Or the
in your
minecart scene. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean that's cool too.
No, it was actually like the temple.
Oh, even better. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's not very film accurate.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Film adjacent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am glad to hear your impressions of the movie. There's nothing really much else that I could add besides that. I mean, other than like generally speaking, like Connery and Ford are amazing. Like they hit gold when they got that team up together. It's great to see some familiar faces like Marcus and Sala. More of Marcus this time around. Like he showed up for like a hot minute in the first one, and then actually gets some more screen time. Although they made him a lot goofier in this film than the first one. And just like I don't know, like the music's great, the action sequences are fun. Again, a little out there. You can poke holes in that too. I don't think many pilots would fly so close to a tunnel they would crash into it. But you know what? I've seen some people drive before and they're not great. So you know what? I'll let it pass on that. But it's got a lot of heart, like Chris said, the father-son dynamic, and the music's amazing. I mean, John Williams was like, and still is, like, don't get me wrong, but like back during the 80s into the 90s, like if you had a blockbuster movie and it was Spielberg and Williams, man, you knew it was going to have a kick-ass soundtrack to it. So if nothing else.
I appreciate like the subtlety to the score. Like, so like John Williams loves his leitmotifs, and like when they see the iconography of the Ark of the Covenant and it plays like just a few bars of the Ark of the Covenant theme from the first, like that's a great little callback. Like, that I think the music adds a little something to it, right? Where like, are you sure that's the Ark of the Covenant? And you get the kind of mysterious music, and he's like, pretty sure. Like, I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's the man, John Williams.
May had mentioned a comment about not liking Elsa. I'd kind of like to dig in. I mean, before anything else, the other aspects of what makes this movie great. Clearly the characters we have to talk about, right? So let's go ahead and just jump right in and talk about Elsa, Indy's love interest, / the lady that he like sexually assaults for like a minute and then she's into. So, May, tell us your thoughts on Elsa.
When you know that she's a Nazi spy, it's like, oh, when she sees that Indiana's into her, she's like, I can use this. And that's why she's suddenly like into him. But yeah, they have zero chemistry before that. And I'm like, this is just like Blade Runner again. Harrison Ford, why? Stop kissing women.
Hopefully he's not insisting on that, like in his films. This is how I like to get the ladies all hot and bothered. Like, somebody tell him? Like, just anyway.
Okay, I know Harrison Ford, the person, is not responsible for this, but it's a trend, and whoever's writing his part, please stop.
I think
he's reached the age where we don't have to worry about that anymore. But still, you're right.
It's like the era of like where like a lot of like even like we talked about Lethal Weapon 2, right? Like the no means no. Like they're very Dennis from It's Always in Sunny Philadelphia. Like, I don't have words in my vocabulary when it comes to women like no and stop. Like, that is very much like what it feels like sometimes watching these 80s movies. Like, it was romantic back then, I guess. I don't
know. For the guys in the audience, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes, that's kind of my point. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that part of how she's characterized, like, it's annoying, but looking back on it, I'm like, I guess it does kind of show early on that she is like just taking advantage of whatever she can kind of get in terms of like trying to get one over on the Joneses. But yeah, I don't like how at a certain point she's like shown to be very, very smart, but then when it's convenient for the plot, she's just super dumb. And it's like, come on, commit to who you're going to make this character. Is it just kind of like the stereotypical dumb blonde woman, or is it going to be like your seductress, like woman of knowledge? They kind of flip flop on her from stereotype to stereotype, and that's just very annoying to me. Especially because like at the end, she's clearly aware of what's going on enough to trick her employer into taking their own chalice and is listening to everything going on. And then at the end, it seems like, oh, she actually does have feelings for Indy and wasn't just playing him. It doesn't make sense to me. And then also forgets all of the things that the knight said about the chalice. And it's just like, let's just run away together, Indy, which is the worst possible ending. That's the thing I'm maddest about. And even 12-year-old me was mad about that.
Right.
Yeah,
Where
I
she
think
went on like full Gollum and tried to like grab it even when you knew she was gonna fall. Yeah. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No, yeah. I like I'm in total agreement. It should just had a little sip before you go, like just extend your life a little bit, have a little sip, pass it around, like a little like puff pass circle, and then go on about your way. You can always come back, right? Like
you know where it's at.
You know how to get through the traps, like yeah, I think like the only really good moment that like I think like kind of works for her character is like how disturbed she seems by all like the book burning and sort of the joy at like destroying knowledge and censorship and all that. That's the closest I come like to being like investing or like kind of feeling a little bit for her character, where it's like you're in a shitty situation and like clearly you're not down with like what's going on here. That's I mean that's that doesn't really redeem the rest of it, but yeah.
No, and that's the other thing. It's like I don't want to be invested in her, and I feel like it's kind of terrible Indiana is still sympathetic to her even after the whole Nazi reveal. Because it's like, yeah, I wish we could just be like, oh no, we all hate her now. Like this is not someone we're sympathizing towards. So that was another issue I had with her character, because it's like, yeah, she doesn't like the book burning, but how does she feel about like the people murder and the genocide? You don't know. Apparently she's fine. At least she's complicit.
She likes books better than people. That's what I get out of that.
Oh god.
I mean, to be fair, me too. For sometimes,
Chris is like, you know what? She's got a point.
Depends on the people, depends on the book. But yeah.
I like that part, where we see some emotion from her around the book burning scene, but I also like the little cutaway shot that we get when she gives Donovan the wrong cup, and then she has this expression that she gives Indiana where she's kind of frowning a little bit but giving that knowing look like, yeah, I just fucked this guy over. And I'm like, I like that. I don't know, there's those two shots, man, I thought were really well done. But yeah, the rest of the characters just kind of like all over the place. So oh well, sorry Elsa, you got written bad.
And the demise of Benny a woman on screen.
Yeah. Why she's like what, the only female character that we get? And if she's not like, there's not like the weird sexual thing about, yeah, I banged your dad too, Also,
that shit always makes me laugh.
I'm just fucking everybody over in this movie, like
it's so funny. Just the look, like the between Connery and Tord, and that is like, it's a pretty believable look where you'd be like, oh Jesus Christ. Like,
how did you know she was a Nazi? She talks in her sleep.
Which is also, I will say, that is a well-written line, because it'll go over the head of kids, but adults will be like, oh.
Yep. Oh man, all throughout this movie, man. Yeah, those little one-liners. Yeah, no, you're right, 100%. Or the cutaway too. There's no like, even when they have like what is very obviously like going to be the sex scene of the film, they just cut away. It's like, or that sort of ties back into like the violence too. Like you see a bunch of dudes get shot and there might be blood, but probably not a lot. Every now and again, you'll see a little bit of it show up, and then the rest of it's just like off camera. So let's get back to some other characters. Anybody else that stands out that you want to make sure we talk about before we move on to some other aspects? Whether it's, I know we've talked a lot about the dynamic between having junior and senior Jones meet up. So whether it's about Harrison Ford and Sean Connery, whether it's about some of the side characters, I'm pretty much just going to throw this open to you guys for the sake of time as to what you would want to make sure we cover.
I mean, you touched on Brody. It's one of my favorite transitions in a film ever. Is like when he's like he speaks a dozen languages, he'll blend in, blah blah blah, and it's just him. Excuse me, like I love that cut. I think it's such an amazing joke. Like it's a good little visual gag. Sala, I mean John Rhys Davies, amazing.
Yeah.
Don't know how I feel about a Welshman playing an Egyptian, like, but you know, different times. He is great in that role though. And I'm glad that he pops back up in this film, however briefly. But yeah, I mean, it is Connery and Ford, and I think specifically having it be like a comedic slant. It's just like moment after moment of brilliant comedic timing. Actually, what's right behind you is like one of my favorites. I'm sorry, Junior. They got us. Like when he shoots out the tail of the plane. It's awesome. There's just like there's so many examples of that where they work well together. I think I read that there was like less than 10 years of age gap between them. Yeah, which is like really funny to imagine. But yeah, really, there's not much I can add to like that. What's probably not been said a million times about how well they work together. So keep it brief.
Yeah,
they're trying to get to the fireplace. Yeah.
I will add two things. One is a shout out, as I think Chris did last episode, to River Phoenix, because he does a great job playing young Indy, and it's really sad we didn't get to see much more from him.
Yeah.
And then just to add to like the dynamic between Indy and Professor Jones Sr., you don't usually see like the whole parentified child phenomenon in a lot of movies, especially not a kid's action movie. And I thought it was kind of cool they showed that dynamic, because I'm sure a lot of kids could relate in a way they hadn't with a lot of action figures of like, oh, this guy doesn't like have a super powerful dad that's taking care of him. He also has to take care of his dad.
Yes.
And has a better sense of responsibility toward his dad than his dad has towards him, which is sad and tragic. But like, you see that he's also done okay despite that.
I thought it was kind of funny. We were watching it and my wife made some comment about how when Indy's dad mails him his diary, that he doesn't like, it's like he had enough time to mail the diary. He didn't have enough time to write a message to go with it about like, hey, don't bring this with you, or maybe make a copy or hide this somewhere. And I laughed, and I'm just like, but you do realize you're putting a lot of faith in this guy who very clearly is having struggles with like not setting a room on fire with a lighter, or like whacking Indy over the head with a vase when he comes into the window thinking he might be a Nazi. I'm just like, I think Henry Jones Sr. is getting a little old, and maybe his faculties and his reasoning aren't entirely there. So, but I could be wrong about that. I mean, there's stuff that Indiana does too, where you're just like, I mean, I probably would have done that differently, but still, good. It worked out. You didn't get crushed by a tank. I guess, speaking of tanks, I think that one of the things that makes Indiana Jones sort of as well received and also memorable is just some of the action sequences that we get. Like, I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark definitely had some good stuff in there, but I feel like Last Crusade just tried to up the ante a lot. Like, you've got, whether it's just the motorcycle chase that we get, where it's Indy and his dad in the sidecar, or we've got the basically the midair plane battle that ends in them crashing and then somehow thinking running out onto a beach is safe. I don't know, were there any like specific action sequences or effects of the film that really stood out to you, or that you just remember from when you watched it a previous time that you really liked? And May, I'm going to kick it over to you first on that.
It's the moment that has the least real science and physics, and it's when they're in a really tight tunnel in a car, and there's that plane coming in behind them, and the plane shoots in, loses its wings, and just kind of rides alongside them for a moment, shooting fire, which does not affect their car whatsoever. And then just goes on and blows up ahead of them, despite the fact that it's just riding its initial velocity. It does not have wheels.
Yep. Because science.
It took me completely out of the movie, and it was so funny.
90% positive George Lucas like wrote that part. That feels like Star Wars to me, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's mine.
Nice. Oh, for sure. Chris, how about you, man?
I mean, second only to the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark, like, and that's just because that is a banger. And probably honestly, if you didn't have the giant rolling boulder, like this would edge it out. But I think just the entire opening sequence is like by far like my favorite after Raiders, because you do get young Rivers Phoenix, you get that amazing like on the top of the train car. We get Indy's Fear of Snakes. Where does that come from? Where's this iconic whip? You do so much visual storytelling in a way that kind of feels like earned, even if it is a little cheesy. Like it's fun to be like, this is why he likes having the whip. This is why he's petrified of fucking snakes. Like, and you see, like, he's not in the beginning, right? Like, like he takes it off of his friend and he's like, oh, don't be such a baby. And then it's a little different when you're fully immersed into like a tank of snakes, right? And then I like, he gets the hat, right? And then that cut, the transition to it's the same person that he's been stealing the same fucking artifact back and forth from, presumably for years. It's great. Like, I don't know. I think it's just it works so well for me. And it always primes me to just be like, in the mood for the rest of that movie. I think it just sets everything up so nicely. And you kind of touched on it too, like little touch, but a big one, of feeling the presence of his dad without having a full reveal. Like the presence is there, and you get a lot in a just a few seconds of like what that relationship probably is like, and how the subsequent film is going to play out, based on that very brief introduction. So yeah, that's my pick for sure.
I do have one question about that intro, like the beginning, that I used to wonder about as a kid, because like most of this stuff even though it's, I mean, well, I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what it was like transporting animals for a circus back in the day on a train, I mean, like at all. But I'm like, okay, I see giraffe heads, I can kind of go with that. The rhino, yeah, okay. The lion, definitely. What was that giant weird snake that's clearly not real, but like whatever,
it looks like something out of Anaconda, like
yes, what was that
I
supposed to
know.
be? Like, that was
I
hilarious.
don't know. Yeah,
Obviously it's a man in a snake costume.
Yeah.
I mean, from a Godzilla film.
Yeah, it does
props.
look like something out of Godzilla, genuinely.
Oh man, I think that if anything else, that's just like the icing on the cake for why you would never want to be around a snake anymore. So I buy that 100%. But yeah, like River Phoenix, man, like his portrayal was just the expressions that he had, his facial expression, his mannerisms, just he was perfect for that. And it's unfortunate that he wasn't able to be like around for like they did like a TV show for a little while, The Young Adventures of Indiana Jones, which I think Disney may have, when they bought the property, may have retitled it recently, which I don't know why, but that's, Disney. But it's been so long since I've seen it, I couldn't say whether I agree that you should or shouldn't watch it, but I remember liking it as a kid. So, and one of these days I'll probably have to revisit it. I feel like Daniel Craig, even like a young Daniel Craig, even shows up in that at some point. But
not really.
But yeah. But yeah. On a random side note, thinking about like influences that we've seen about Indiana Jones, and this sort of just ties back to thoughts about Indy as a character, and slightly about Harrison Ford's rather abrasive portrayal of a man, a leading man in a film. But I remember reading something about how like influences for this were like, this was sort of like Steven Spielberg's version of James Bond, because Spielberg had wanted to do like a James Bond movie and he got turned down. And so it was sort of like, this was like James Bond with a little bit of like Kurosawa and a little bit of Clint Eastwood and a little bit of like Alan Quartermain all kind of thrown in together. So I can understand why the archetype is sort of supposed to be macho and abrasive, and especially when it comes to like relationships, a little bit on the questionable side for how you want to treat women, to say the least. But yeah, so that was sort of just something that was bouncing around in my brain because clearly Indiana Jones has like become iconic for certain things, like the rolling boulder from Raiders, the music, the look. Like if you got the hat and you got the whip man, people know who you're trying to be. And so I think that sort of, it's interesting to see where some of the stuff that we've watched before has tied into that. So like Kurosawa and I'm blanking on the guy's name from the film that we watched, but who played the main guy, and I'm going to kick myself for it.
Are you
But
talking
sort of
about
his stuff.
from the Kurosawa films?
Yeah. So like when we watched
Mifune, is that what you're talking about?
I think so. Yeah. So like his sort of his demeanor that he had, or like Clint Eastwood as like the man with no name, or so that sort of like, yeah, however you would and words are failing me right now, unfortunately, but how you would characterize sort of that stoic or reserved or kind of brusque attitude.
That
To
era of
see
like
that
the
then.
Marlboro Man and shit, like the Marlboro
Yeah.
Man, and like I just think that was the flavor of like what manliness was at the time. A
Yeah.
little bit grumpy,
Yeah,
a lot of
for sure.
misogynistic sometimes, like
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I don't know, like it's just for better or worse, kind of like some swagger, like in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, like I think like Han Solo and Indiana Jones like share some characteristics, like in sort of like they're not conventionally good at what they do. It's kind of just like lucky, like a little bit of luck, like some skill, like getting the job done in a way that's like kind of in a roundabout way, definitely not a direct path there. But
It's
yeah,
the flair. It's all the flair.
yeah.
Nice. I do like the meme that is like the theory that Indiana Jones is just like the dream that Han Solo has while he's frozen in carbonite. Especially for like
This,
all the little like Easter eggs for Star Wars that pop up here and there, like R2D2 and 3PO is like iconography on the wall in Raiders of the Lost Ark,
yeah.
or like the Carbonite or Carbonetto logo that's on the tank, like the gasoline tanks that are on the ship at the beginning of Last Crusade that go up when Indy jumps off
Forget
the boat.
Obi-Wan Airways or whatever, or no, Club Obi-Wan is
Yeah,
from Temple of Doom is what it is. It's Club
yeah,
Obi-Wan is what it's
that's right.
called. Yeah.
Love
I'd
it.
never heard that theory, but I love it.
Oh, it's great, man. Even look, shout out to the actor who plays Walter Donovan, who was in Empire Strikes Back as one of the military guys on Hoth. Like, what's that guy's name? Yeah, so like Julian Glover, who I think indirectly also talked about how he wasn't really thrilled with his performance in Last Crusade. He just didn't really
He's
like the American accent he tried to do.
he's one of the worst indie villains by far. Like
Yeah.
he does nothing for me in this movie, like whatsoever.
It's true. You're
Like
all about some was it Herr Oberst? Was that his name? Who was the main Nazi guy? I feel like the guy
in
who goes over
Raiders.
the in I'm sorry, in Last Crusade, rather. The
Oh,
guy who goes over the edge of the cliff in the tank.
yeah, I don't know. Like it just to be fair, I guess like aside from the I don't even know his name in Temple of Doom, like the priest,
Mm,
most of the indie villains aren't particularly like I guess Belloc, the French dude, like is kind of
yeah.
like fun. And then like Kate Blanchett didn't do anything for me. This guy didn't do anything for me. I think the villains like are kind of incidental, like mixed results, right? Who was the Oh yeah, Mads Mikkelsen's probably like the best villain. Like I think
Mads
like
Mikkelsen is the
of the
bomb.
recents. Yeah, he's great
Yeah.
and that Destiny.
I don't care whether Kate Blanchett had a good or bad accent. She'll always do it for me. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't care if
I'm talking
she's a
about her
bad
appearance.
communist.
Nothing wrong with her appearance. I'm talking about
It's
the
how she
performance.
carries herself too. It's like
Yeah.
I would be afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah. she does this unsettling thing where like she'll turn her like body and head like in different directions at times when she's walking, and it gives her sort of like a like almost like a Terminator-esque quality. But anyway, not to go too far down the rabbit hole.
Oh man, look, James Cameron, if you're listening, man, it's just like the
No,
T-10,000 over here. All right,
let that franchise die. Like, just it needs to go like deep underground. Like, we've had
stop.
enough. We've had enough.
Terminator Underground, is that what you're calling for?
Oh God damn
Nice.
it.
Sweet. Well, I think it's worth mentioning too before we move on, like in terms of actions. Well, not this doesn't really qualify as like an action sequence, but as a sequence that involves some sort of like effect or a supernatural event. We've got I think what was arguably the first digital composite shot when Walter Donovan like basically super ages, his eyes fall into his skull, and then he just turns into like a skeleton. And that was kind of a big deal for back in the day. So like shout out to the visual effects department for making a very creepy, especially as a kid, I found that super creepy shot for him at the very end. And just Elsa's scream too. Like I know people were probably tired of Cape Catshaw's yelling in Temple of Doom, but like Elsa deserved to have that scream at the end of that movie. And like it was perfect. So but yeah, that would be for my pick on that. I would also like to ask you, just because we can include it or not for time, but I think it's interesting how animals play such a large part in Indiana Jones. In any movie, whether it's just like a threat, that somebody's going to get mauled by a creature, or it's just an obstacle almost to get over. So like whether we're talking about like the millions of rats that they have to crawl through when they're in the cat like underneath the church in Venice, or they've got the seagulls that Henry Jones Sr. uses to thwart a Nazi plane. Like, were there any standout creatures from this film, or what, we could even throw it out and talk about the other ones too that have sort of stood out in your mind, either with this viewing or in previous viewings? And May, I'm gonna toss that, or you know what? No, misdirect. I'm sorry, Chris. I'm gonna toss this one over to you.
Okay.
It's like passing the basketball, but like not looking at the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is very much a staple, and I'd be curious if that comes from like, I know like the origin to like the idea of doing like these films was like their love of adventure serials when they were kids. Like, so the stuff that you would see like in Saturday morning, you'd go to the theater and you had your cartoons and your newsreel and all that stuff, and then they had adventure serials. So I'd be curious to see if that was like a thing there. But it by this time in the franchise, it's certainly expected, I think, that you have to have like animals for fear factor or gross factor or whatever. Again, like I kind of already touched on, I think like the beginning part where he's going through the train is just, it's great. You get a lot of them all at once. You get a great encounter with the lion, and then the origin of the snake fear is probably my favorite, because like I don't care how brave you are, like falling into like a giant tub of snakes that you have no idea what species like in would be very unsettling. So that over the rats for me.
The rats would have disturbed me a lot, just because it's like I know all the diseases they carry, especially down in this like sewer like dungeon. So I would just feel like actively fighting them and forgetting all about my quests. Like I'd be kicking. So yeah, I think that's like what would scare me the most. I just felt really bad for the seagulls, and also I didn't expect that to happen, because I was like, oh, like the seagulls are going to spook the guy flying the plane, and maybe one or two will end up like in the engines, and it's like, no, a bunch of them just eat shit to the front of that plane. I was like, no, why would you do that?
Why were all those rats alive in like the catacomb? Like it was just what, rats and petroleum, right? Like
and one mummified body.
One mummified body, somehow enough oxygen for everybody to be okay with. Somehow nothing caught on fire from Indy's torch, even though you could see little bits like dripping, as they're walking through. And I'm just like, I wouldn't. Not worth it, man. But oh well. That's Indiana Jones logic, right? It goes up there with the plane, somehow making it through the tunnel. I will say, I think I read somewhere, and it's probably I'm gonna throw this credit out to Screen Rant, but I remember when I was just skimming like random trivia about Indiana Jones. Apparently, the four horses at the end of the film belong to the King of Jordan, which I thought was pretty cool. So while we're on the topic of animals showing up in film, we'll say I'm glad no horses died in the tank sequence. Apparently, the Nazis in this film were very bad at aiming. Um, whether we're talking guns or we're talking tank shells. So good for the horse. Glad they made it out okay. I think in terms of like any creatures that really like weird me out, even though this answer doesn't really apply to this film, the second movie, man, Temple of Doom, like I just always think about Harrison Ford and or actually no, more Kate Capshaw's character when they are in another cave and she's just covered in all these bugs, man.
Yeah.
Oh, the long bugs, the bugs with all these long legs. And it's just like, oh, I could tell it's real. And it's really wigging me out right now. Like all the fake stuff, that they do, all the animatronics and the fake animal parts and things I can overlook. But like, ooh, that would be my fear factor. I'll take the snakes, man. So that doesn't really answer the question. I guess the options I've got, it would have to be the rats in this film if we're just thinking about it that way. But or the weird, like deformed snake in the train. Well, before we wrap up, I do want to talk about the music a little bit more, just because, and even if it's just to mention that when it comes to what I feel like a film that goes beyond, like that would essentially be more than the sum of its parts, or that goes beyond just like what you had intended when you set out, I feel like music is an essential component to ever making that happen. Sometimes it's the lack of sound that's important to a film, but I feel like in a lot of blockbusters, a lot of adventure stories, the music is a character, whether or it's an echo of a character. Like Chris was talking about the motifs that we get with certain moments of the film, whether it's talking about an object or a MacGuffin like Ark of the Covenant, or we're talking about a character's theme. So whether it's, the dynamic between father and son, or whether it's, the Nazi march that we get, or whether it's some of the more adventurous, like the classic indie theme that we always, you get like the big brass music going on where you're excited and pumped and you want to go out and march with them. That it's always there as an essential component of the movie. And in some cases the movie would be less if you didn't have it there. So just as a general question to both of you, if there's any particular part, and again, Chris sort of already answered this question a certain bit, but if there's anything else that sort of stands out to you that you really thought, from a musical standpoint, and this is like the most rambling question, so clearly I'm winding down and I apologize, but that really stood out to you the most in this film. And May, since I know you were very musically inclined, I'm going to throw this out to you first.
Oh, why would you set me up like that, Will?
Because I got your back.
See, I am very musically inclined, and I'm going to say this is a mark of good sound design that nothing really stuck out to me of the score, I'll be honest. Yeah. Part of that is I was a little distracted while I was watching this. So those of you that follow me on Instagram or Blue Sky know I've been doing NaNoWriMo this month. So I am often multitasking while watching things these days. So I may have just not been paying enough attention to notice things in the score, but I'll just say that it's really smoothly done, that nothing really stood out, but things felt very like cohesive and thematic. And yeah, I appreciated the return to the kind of like the traditional theme with the closing credits. It was kind of like a good added cue that like, hey, we're done. Thanks for watching. Get out.
Why are you still here? It's over. Nice. Yeah, makes sense. Chris, how about for you, man? Anything else you wanna add?
I just think about the sequence like where they're escaping the castle, tied up back to back, going around and around on that damn fireplace. And John Williams has this uncanny knack of creating the sense of like adventure and comedy and lightheartedness, and something that would probably be a bit, I don't know, scarier or like maybe like more tense, like with a different soundtrack, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe more menacing, I guess, like with a different soundtrack. But like the way he's able to take that and perfectly match it to like the dialogue and like sort of the tone that they're going for, I think it really just it lends itself so well to like making these movies feel the way that they do. Like there's a feel to an Indiana Jones movie that's like different than, I don't know, say a Tomb Raider or like even an Uncharted, which is kind of like, I don't know if you saw the Uncharted film, but like it's very much trying to be this.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that like this film, like just by default, even the worst Indiana Jones film by default feels like better than those films, is like because you have John Williams like punctuating the action with a score that is so authentically Indiana Jones. Like what that's going to sound like in your head, kind of, even if you can't like name like the theme for every character or whatever, like you can kind of envision what that score sounds like as things are happening.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. Like for some of the stuff where it's more lighthearted, I do like how in the scene where Henry Jones Sr. thinks that Indy has actually fallen off the cliff and is dead, and then realizes that he is alive. There's just something about the way the score is done where you feel very emotional about like him being able to like hug his son again. And it's like, you are alive, like I thought I'd lost you. And I can remember just how that felt like the first time I watched it, and even in subsequent ones. Like when I think of Last Crusade, it's one of the few pieces of music that I think of with that. I mean, along with obviously, the Raiders March, like hands down, of course. But but I agree with you completely, Chris. So John Williams, glad you're still making music, man. I did get the pleasure of actually shaking that guy's hand once. It was the Marine Corps'
Really?
like, yeah, he conducted the it was oh geez, I'm gonna get the number wrong, but it was the Marine Corps' birthday. And this was probably at least 20 years back. And he did like basically it was like his greatest hits. And he went and conducted the Marine Corps band. And I got to shake his hand. And that was
great.
Cool. So,
I'm envious.
Me too.
It was fast, but it was worth it. And on that note, Indiana Jones, you're a pretty awesome character, even if you are a bit rough around the edges. I am glad that Dial of Destiny course corrected for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But we will hopefully not have to deal with any more clunky Indiana Jones movies after that. I think it's very well set the way they did it. Please, Hollywood, don't milk it for more. And on that note, thank you both for joining me on this adventure as well, and revisiting one of a great film. Even again, if it doesn't necessarily age well, it's still, I think, a great film in its right. And I would argue is more than the sum of its parts. So before we transition over, is there anything else that you guys want to mention about the movie, either that you read about, that you noticed, that you had second thoughts about as we've been wrapping things up? All right, so we're going to play a quick little lightning round of Pitch Storm, which, for those who are not familiar, Pitch Storm brought to us by Ben Kepner. I should remember your name, and I apologize, so we can edit that if you need to. That pause was a little too long. But thank you, Ben, for letting us play your game. You are very kind, and also it's a lot of fun just to play as a quick round to see how quick everybody is. I've said quick a lot. See how fast you guys are on your feet for deciding at random what movie would be amazing based on either your choice of a character or your choice of a plot. And so what I'll do is I'll ask each contestant whether they want to have the choice to choose. Oh my God. I will ask each person whether they want to choose this day, man, want to choose a character or choose a plot. And then from that, I will give them three options to make a decision. And then clearly the other one will not be their choice. And then about midway through their pitch, I'm going to interrupt them like an ass and tell them as a producer what they need to add into their film and see how it goes from there. So we're almost there, guys. The finish line's almost there. We have three challenges to complete, and then we get the Holy Grail. So, who would like to go first? Or do you want me to flip a coin?
I think you should choose the choosing.
I should choose the choosing? Yep, that's all right. And the choosing says, May, you get to go first. So, what do you want to choose of those?
Character, always.
A character always?
Yeah.
Always and forever. All right. I think we've got like 1 minute on the clock, right? That's how we do that. Cool. All right. Got the timer set up. So your option is if you would like to pitch me a story about a professor turned adventurer. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. I'm not kidding. That was literally the first thing in the front.
Okay, that's what I'm choosing. And I'm gonna wait for the others. Yeah.
Okay. A family of cannibal a family of cannibal hillbillies. You still have an option. So professor turned adventure or a family of cannibal hillbillies or the founding fathers.
Wow.
One of those is dog shit, so you should skip
that last one's not even in the running.
The founding fathers.
All right.
1776.
I gotta stay on brand with the indie theme, so I choose professor turned adventurer.
All right. So in our not Indiana Jones movie, your quest for your professor turned adventurer is, all right, please hold, also /cut. Competes in Fast and Furious illegal street races.
All right.
And go.
Picture this. Indiana Jones, it's over. It's done. It's dead. But you know what isn't? Georgia Jean. Georgia Jean is not a professor of archaeology. No, she's a professor of the road. All right. She knows all about every street in every city in America. And she's on a mission to collect the best, most historic pieces from street races across the globe.
I'm going to stop you right there. I like where you're going with that, but I think it's missing something. How about we add a group of friends on their last night before they all leave for college?
Now, Georgia Jean has the perfect item picked out. It is an old vintage Chevy bumper sticker that is very important. And she is ready to go on a heist for this when her son, who's about to go to college, informs her that he's throwing a giant party. Now,
you can finish your thought.
During this party, the son decides to street race, and she didn't know he was a street racer. So they have a big fight. There's a touching makeup at the end, and she ends up not getting the sticker, but it's okay.
Sweet. Oh, yeah. You said this was Georgia Jean? That's
Georgia Jean.
The professor of the road.
The professor of the road. Georgia. I feel like there needs to be a bumper sticker for that. Like that needs to happen on this podcast. Merch. Sure. Georgia Jean, professor of the road. Solid. All right, Chris.
Call
are you ready? Yeah. We'll call you.
I would like a choice of the plot always.
Choice of the plot. All right, sir. Let's see what we got here in the deck. So your blank of something will face a difficult choice between love and money, or get trapped overnight in a haunted asylum, or get an exciting new job working for. Oh, wait, that doesn't really help me, does it? Because I have to draw a random character. Well, I could draw a random character card. Get an exciting new job working for a priest suffering a crisis of faith.
Okay.
So
This
overnight
is
in an
just the Pope's
asylum.
exorcist.
I know.
Love,
I was just
choice
thinking,
between love
Jesus.
and money or a priest.
Let's do
Get an
the
exciting
asylum.
job.
Let's go for the
Yeah?
asylum. Yeah, why
All
not?
right.
Just got done with Screen Quest. Hopefully, I'll have some good ideas knocking around
money.
up here.
All right. All righty, sir. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to tell me about a dysfunctional family on a road trip who gets trapped overnight in a haunted asylum.
Fuck me. All right. So think the Griswolds, but like much more dysfunctional in a much darker way.
Nice.
They break down in the middle of the night. There's a thunderstorm raging. They take shelter, and what they don't realize is an abandoned asylum. All the signage and shit's like all falling off, and it's not about like a quarter of the way through the film that they discover that they're in an asylum, right? So they're in the asylum. They're kicking around. They're exploring. Creepy things are happening, and they start to realize that the place seems familiar.
I'm going to stop you right there. What if, now hear me out, what if the main character had a nuclear bomb strapped to them, right? Like, that would be exciting, right?
I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, they discover the place looks kind of familiar. And that's because it is a terrorist hideout where they're manufacturing illegal plutonium weapons, and they have to overcome their dysfunction because the main villain of the film is like a third act reveal. He's a third act reveal, has a nuclear bomb strapped to himself, and they have to defuse it. I don't know. That was hard.
Nice.
I had a good train of thought going, and then you threw that out there, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
They're like, "What is this garbage?" Producer.
And then Georgia Jean comes along and saves the day.
Like Mad Max pulling up in her muscle car.
Yep. Look, I liked both of your ideas. I liked seeing Griswold's deal with an asylum / nuclear arsenal with from terrorists. However, I think that Georgia Jean is just, she's marketable. I think Georgia Jean Professor of the Road is just much more marketable, and I think that when we get done with Saw Patrol, I think Georgia Jean Professor of the Road is going to be the next big marketing hit. So I'm going to have to go with that.
Yeah, that should be the bumper sticker. Georgia Jean Professor of the Road should be the bumper sticker.
Yeah,
just
that
FYI.
She's going after. It's very meta.
Yeah.
Anybody who like listens to the pod, like please get on that. Like, thank you. Like, creative liberty to do what you want, but I want that like bumper sticker design.
Sweet. All right, guys. Well, thank you for that round. I know it's been a long day, so thank you for your patience and that was a joy. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chris and see what we got on the docket for next week.
Yeah. So it's time to draw a card once again. Let's give these a little shuffle and see what we have for next week. All right. So this is going to be, was the book better already again? So
no, can we veto? We just did that.
I thought you said card laid is a card played and all that.
Oh,
we can.
That one category has different rules, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you were that kid on the playground that was like, well.
No, you already established your own rules for this category. We've established the special category.
Okay. I'm keeping this in though, so people can see that old fickle May. I'm just kidding. No, that's reasonable, especially with the holidays coming up. That might be a tall order. All right.
Happy Thanksgiving. You got plenty of time with the family to read a book.
Yeah, that's true. This is going to be a roll of a lifetime, and I'm just making
Sweet.
sure. Okay, that is a one. Any of the cards I have red at the bottom, it's really hard to read the numbers, so I should probably do a different color next time for that when I make them. But anyway, so this is a roll of the lifetime, and it is gonna be it's another will pick. Yeah,
Noise.
it's a movie I saw pretty recently and I love. Good Will Hunting, Robin Williams and Good Will Hunting, which
Oh,
is
hit me in the
just,
feels.
Oh
bro,
man.
this movie's aged so well. Like I fucking loved watching this, and like so much that I can't actually wait to like watch it again, even though I saw it maybe like 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
Tell us why you picked this
Oh.
particular. I mean, he's got so many great roles. Like why this one?
I think Robin Williams is amazing as a comedian, but I love his serious work too. I think he is much more versatile than getting sort of I guess typecast, for lack of a better word. Like typecast is like the funny guy and all, like the outrageous funny guy. Like when he's done serious stuff, he can do serious stuff. It's like watching Jim Carrey do serious stuff where you think he's just the spastic guy, and then it's like, no, he's got layers and he can go pretty deep. So, but I think for this one, it was like watching somebody like that character, and just the whole storyline itself of dealing with that sort of like grief and no, I'm just gonna go with that because I'm gonna start rambling. So yes, so basically the depth of his ability to act and the grief of the story were what drew me to it. So,
Right. I think it's a good, really good pick.
Yeah, I might cry. Robin Williams is like the hardest actor death I've ever experienced. I think is just like where I was as a kid and where he was his movie career. He was very much like my movie TV dad, and like yeah, I felt a very strong like parasocial connection to him. So it was really hard when he died.
Have you seen Good Will Hunting?
I have, yes. I'm still probably going to cry again because it's also just an emotional movie. But
yeah, always gets me. It's not your fault. Like that whole like bit, like I usually can make it up to that point, and then like I'm in puddles after that. But great pick. Can't wait to watch it and talk about it. Yeah, so that's it for the show for this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening wherever you get the show. You can find us at ScreenQuest Pod on, I'm just gonna call it Twitter because it feels stupid to say X.
X marks the spot, buddy. Look, tell you right now.
Yeah. We will be doing a couple more traditional episodes, and then we're going to transition to our winter special where we'll be watching holiday films to close you out for the rest of the year. So I'm excited to get back to that as well. Until next time, thanks for all your support. We love you. See you next week. Bye.
bye.
Bye, guys.